Good morning, everyone, and welcome to HomeKit and AppleTV in business. I sprinkled a bunch of double quotes throughout my presentation last night. I was at dinner, and I made the Austin Powers Dr. Evil business quote. He thought that was funny, so I thought I'd put that in. But yeah, so it's titled business, but I prefer to think this as not at home. Okay, so it's including businesses and other things that we'll take a look at. So. Last year I did a presentation on Swift Playgrounds. The year before I did a presentation on AppleTV programming for non-programmers. So in this session we're going to talk about AppleTV and how it relates to HomeKit. We're going to talk quite a bit about HomeKit. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm a programmer. And I can't help but see the world in APIs. And I'm going to mention several times, in my opinion, HomeKit is being massively underutilized right now based on what the APIs are capable of. So I want to present to you guys some API stuff. There'll be no coding. I have no demos, unfortunately. I brought an Apple TV and some stuff with me, but I couldn't really figure out how to make a good demo out of it this week, so I apologize for that. But I have a plan for that for next year. So who am I? I've been coding for a very long time, and I have both, my personality is both extremely digital and extremely analog. So like it says, I have a lot of old cars. This is the cover of a Corvair book. That's actually my car on the right, on the cover, so it's a cover model. This is my house in Portland, Oregon, and another one of my cars with all the fancy artwork on it, care of a bunch of Portland Public School high school students. Anyway, so I like to tinker, is what I'm trying to say. So this is right up my alley, HomeKit and stuff like that. Analog going to digital, real world automations, whatever they need. So again, let's take a look at a high level. I'm going to try to not repeat the things you've seen a billion times, probably at keynotes and stuff like that from Apple, where they demo HomeKit. I'm not demoing HomeKit. You can watch tons of videos on that, but I want to talk about it in some detail. Okay. So HomeKit, which I've also put in quotes, and I'll explain why in a bit, is a powerful environment for Internet of Things, okay? Who saw the really great automation session yesterday by the CTC people about Internet of Things and automation? You guys didn't see that? Okay, that was great. So I'm not going to overlap with that very much, and I'll explain why. Yeah, that was a good one. So if you guys get a chance to watch the slides, I recommend that. So Apple, their mantra, their quote is, they're simplifying home automation with HomeKit. Who's used HomeKit in any capacity of any kind? Do you agree with that statement? I see some of this, so nobody's talking, but I was like, yeah, so, okay. I'm going to explain why I agree with that statement, but not in the way that I think Apple intends us to think about it. So, yes and no for that. Simplifying home automation from a user perspective, but configuration is a little difficult, okay? Did anyone attend JD's session yesterday on Raspberry Pi? That was also fabulous. And did you hear his quote at the end of that? I tried to ignore him, so if you didn't hear it and you don't remember it, I'm not going to revisit it. So he's not a big fan of HomeKit, so hopefully he can change his mind at some point. So anyway, in my opinion, HomeKit is being underutilized based on what the API is capable of, and that's what I wanted to talk about in here. The API a little bit, not too much. We're not going to write any code today. I'm not going to even show any code snippets. But also, I don't like the fact that it's called HomeKit. I have no choice in that matter. But I try to think of some other names. HamKit, but we don't want to get pigs involved in this. So anyway, the one that I had a whole list of them. I put down some of them. So I'm going to call it a Habitat Organized Monitor Everything Kit. So HomeKit. So the word habitat to me seems to imply more than just your house. It could be your business. Could be your vehicles, could be a resort hotel property. So that's how I think about it. Apple's never going to change the name, I don't think, but that's how I mentally envision it. It's a habitat. Okay. So again, we're not going to rehash Apple events. You can watch those on YouTube or on the Apple sites that I want. Again, from a developer perspective, I've gone through several years and several hours of WWDC developer videos, so you don't have to. Okay. Trust me, that's not the most fun way to spend your time, okay? So everything, we're going to talk about Home Manager in a couple slides. Everything is centered of the universe on a Home Manager which is based on which resides on a home hub. Okay? Siri is a major part. Apple wants this to be really easy to use. They want you to talk, just like you talk to Alexa, you talk to Siri and things magically happen. Okay? One of the big minuses, or pluses, depending on how you look at it, is that it's very Apple-centric. It works with iOS devices, and recently, Macs, AppleTV, HomePod, and then that's where the sentence ends. Okay, it's not open source, it's not cross-platform. Okay, so when HomeKit came out way back in 2014, that was the original HomeKit, iOS only, iPhone, iPad. Okay, a couple years later, they added the Apple Watch, so you could actually do stuff on your Apple Watch. Who uses Apple Watch with HomeKit or anything else, actually? That's really cool, isn't it? To be able to do stuff right from your watch, okay? Apple TV joined the party before the 4th gen came out with the 3rd gen, but not full capabilities, okay? Just some remote management kind of stuff. And then with the 4th generation Apple TV and Apple TV 4K, you get the home hub capabilities from an Apple TV, and that's what we're going to focus on today, okay? And again, I use the word habitat. Just think of home if you want to. Again, this is the title of this session is HomeKit outside of the home, basically. Okay. Now, the nice thing about this is the original HomeKit. The center of the universe was your iPhone or your iPad. So when you left your house, it was doing everything over the network. Okay. The nice thing about the Apple TV and now the HomePod is that your home hub can be an Apple TV, and it can live in the house and not depend on your phone. We'll talk about that. Okay. Here's my favorite oxymoronic programming-only sentence of the day. High-level detail. How's that for? We're going to take a broad, detailed look at this. What does that mean? Okay, so the center of the universe is a home manager, and it's actually a database. And again, I'm a programmer, and this is MacTech, so we're going to do some programming stuff for the next few minutes. The center of the universe is this database that lives on your home hub. And again, a home hub can be either an iOS device, actually just an iPad now, they got rid of iPhone, an Apple TV, or the thing that's a speaker. I'm having a brain fart right now. Yeah, HomePod, yeah. They had to put the word pod back into a product, I guess, so yeah. Okay, so this is the center of the universe. Every device on your HomeKit network talks to a centralized home hub. There are no on-the-fly mesh networks, Wi-Fi networks, running through your 120 or 220. It doesn't work that way at all. Everything goes through the center of one universe, and that's your home hub, through the home manager. Okay? There are some reasons for this that Apple is extremely critical about, not critical, but the reason why I did it this way, security is one of Apple's biggest goals. Okay? So security often is, the big trade-off is convenience, and that's why a lot of people have an unpleasant HomeKit experience, okay? The goal for Apple is ease of use and security. Apple never says this is super, well, they kind of do, but in the real world you don't always see that, easy to set up. Who would say HomeKit's easy to set up? Okay? It is for some simple things. When you get more complicated, even I won't agree that it's simple to set up. But that's not really Apple's goal. Apple's goal is ease of use, once it's all set up, and highly secure, okay? So having the centralized database helps with that. Okay, and again, a home hub can be iOS device, but again, that's suboptimal because that means you have to leave your iPad at your house or do it over the network, et cetera, et cetera. So having an Apple TV or HomePod is really the way to go with HomeKit, okay? Secure end-to-end encrypted communication, we'll talk about that a little bit later, and then HomeKit, all the accessories talk to Home Manager. We'll talk about what accessories are, again, from a programmer perspective. Okay. My goal here is at the end that we're going to have at least 5 or 10 minutes to chat about cool things we can do with Apple TV and HomeKit and things that aren't HomeKit. Okay. So the way you get to HomeKit, let's say we have an Apple TV as our home hub inside of our home. We can get to remote access from our iOS devices using the Home app. If you're using there's a really good chance that if you're talking to HomeKit on an iOS device using home.app, okay? It uses a protocol called the HomeKit accessory protocol, over iCloud. There are dedicated iCloud servers for HomeKit. Okay, using your Apple ID, like pretty much every iCloud feature is, that's how devices know that they're in the same home. There are other ways that it's secure, but the idea that everything is over an Apple ID and does go through Apple servers when you're doing network stuff ensures that there's a level of security that Apple guarantees. Okay? It's free, it's private, it's secure. I'll say the word private several times. Apple will say in their presentations, even Apple can't break into your HomeKit stuff. Okay? There is no secret backdoor, okay, for that. And that becomes more important for businesses. Okay? When devices are closer to your house, they don't have to use Apple's iCloud servers. They can talk directly to your Apple TV or your HomePod or other home hub through either Bluetooth Low Energy or through NFC. Who saw the NFC presentation a couple days ago? Is the author of that in here anywhere? I had to talk to him, but he actually had an NFC chip in his hand. Did you guys see that? His wife is a medical professional, he said, and she actually put an NFC chip, like a pet thing, in his hand. That was kind of cool. So anyway, this is how devices get noticed when you're close by. Okay, so again, I'm trying to overemphasize from a programmer perspective how absolutely secure and robust this all is under the hood. Okay? There's user authentication authorization. Okay, so when you do log in with an Apple ID, you can then, when you connect with an Apple ID, you can then decide who has admin privileges, excuse me, and who doesn't. Okay? When you're sharing, the owner of the Home Hub invites users, they accept or disagree, and then they're added to or not added to the Home Manager. Okay? This is in a later version of HomeKit than the original version. So if you ran HomeKit in 2014, 2015, it didn't have all this cool stuff. We're talking about all the cool stuff that is in HomeKit right now. And again, security is a huge emphasis for HomeKit. Perfect forward secrecy. Who's heard of that before outside of HomeKit? It's fully implemented since day one in HomeKit. All accessories communicate only to the Home Manager and always encrypted end-to-end. All communication, whether it's you're turning a light on or off, who cares, or video from a camera, all encrypted end-to-end, always. There is, and always through a predictable network, never an ad hoc network that's formed on the fly because there's no center brain, okay? The data is private. The session keys are maintained locally, and they expire quickly. If you're familiar with perfect forward secrecy, you know how that works. If not, go take a look at Wikipedia or at the Wired article, which is actually really good, okay? And again, not even Apple can go after the fact and extract this. This has to be, you're secure, okay? So, camera footage from your doorbell, audio from your baby monitor, that's secure, securely transported across the network, and everything else. Okay, so again, if anybody's ever taken my automation training, you know that I talk about classes and how object-oriented stuff works. So this is the object-oriented aspect of HomeKit. The main class besides the Home Manager is called HM Home. Okay, that is the overlord class that everything is inside of. That is the ultimate container class. Okay, it's named usually by the user. Siri will recognize that name. So you say, my home, and you give it the name, and it does that, so it's the center, okay? So again, and then the room, HM room. So inside of a home is rooms and accessories. Rooms also contain accessories, okay? Also uniquely named, but within a home, okay? So you don't have to worry about the fact that you want to call your room bedroom 1 and someone else on the planet also has bedroom 1 because it's in a different home. Accessories. Every single thing that you think of as an IoT device is called an accessory, an HM accessory in HomeKit. Okay? They're assigned to a room and they access the analog aspects of whatever they're doing. Okay? Changes, this is on all the slides, changes all go back and forth transparently, encrypted across the network, whether it's a local network or the iCloud servers from Apple, securely. I'm going to just keep saying that over and over again until it's transmitted into your brain. Then there are accessory categories. Okay? So the HomeKit environment does not need to learn every single detail about every single device on the planet. That's IoT. Okay? Devices are categorized under one or more accessory categories. Whether it's a light, whether it's a switch, whether it's a thermometer, whether it's a purifier, whether it's an automated sprinkler. Okay? That's the URL. You can see what the latest one is, and we'll actually do that in a little bit. Services. Accessories can do or not do certain things. And some of them have names and some of them don't. A light bulb service has a name, a firmware update service doesn't. Okay? So again, there's lots of services here. And again, I'm not going to read off every single one of these slides. There's too many slides in here for today. I just want to give you guys the boring gist and then the interesting stuff toward the end. Okay? A service class actually defines what services are available for a particular accessory using what's called characteristics. And there's actually a class for characteristics too. Characteristics are like what the temperature is for a thermometer or for a thermostat. Okay? For those of you that are programmers, completion blocks are used to handle the return code. That's a secret word for it can happen in parallel with multiple devices at once. Okay? This is all asynchronously happening. Okay, so the characteristics of a service class can be either read-only, read-write, or write-only. That's common to all kinds of things in computing. The temperature of a thermostat is read-only, but what you want to set it to is read-write. Okay? So all of this stuff is pedantically specified for every single accessory using object-oriented classes. Okay? So HomeKit, again, from the ground up, is super well engineered. Okay? You can specify when you're creating a device what the minimum value is, the maximum value. If there's values in between that aren't valid, you can specify invalid and valid values, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. When you want to make your accessories available to users in the HomeKit environment, there are several ways to do that. The original way was through having it turned on and joining a network, but now you can actually use QR codes and NFC. The QR codes can be as small as 10 millimeters. So what the idea with Apple here, and we'll talk about this again a little bit later, is you get your device, it's HomeKit certified, it's got a small as 10 millimeter QR code on it. As you take it out of the box, you grab your iPhone, you scan it, it gets installed into your HomeKit automatically, and then you can plug it in and turn it on and it's working. Okay? You can also add things programmatically, and you can use, again, NFC tags. NFC tags, as I mentioned in the session a couple days ago, are very, very cool. So again, programmer perspective, there's nothing really here that other vendors aren't providing, but in a different way. I mean, of course, there's going to be homes and accessories and stuff like that. This is Apple ways of doing it. Other vendors are going to have their way of doing it. But there's more. Okay? You can group rooms into zones. So for instance, you could have a zone called upstairs, or a zone called patio, or a zone called workshops, like your garage, and if you have a basement workshop, that could be in the zone too. You control this. You get to decide what's in and out of a zone based on what you want, okay? Siri will recognize the name of a zone. So if you say, automate upstairs, we're all asleep, boom, it'll do that, okay? So again, you put your rooms into a zone, and here's an example of an arbitrary one called upstairs. So imagine being able to, instead of having to program, I want to turn all the lights on at nighttime when it's dark so my kids don't trip over the rug in the hall, you get an upstairs zone, turn all the night lights on, okay? And rooms can participate in any number of zones. You don't have to specify only one room can go in one zone. So again, extraordinarily powerful grouping here. Okay. Service groups. You can group services across different accessories. So you can say, I want all my lights to turn on. Okay. And again, uniquely named within a home, recognized by Siri. So again, difficult to configure potentially, but once you get it going, everything can either be Siri or Home.app or the control center on your iPhone. Okay? So again, the example I gave here is night lights. Okay. Then you can have action sets. Action sets correspond to what Apple also calls scenes. So half the time Apple will call them scenes in their documentation, but the classes are all called action set. Just like there are scenes in other aspects of computing and in real life, that's what this is. You can execute arbitrary scenes, like we can have a scene that, we have all these different scenes. One of them is called lock the garage door. One of them is called turn all the switches off in a certain room, take the temperature down, turn the lights off, et cetera, close the gates. These are scenes. It's like, you know, when I'm doing automation training, I tell people that the word script is like a movie script. It's like all the things in order that are going to happen in the movie. Okay? That's why it's called scenes. These are scenes of a movie, and you can think of it as scripting, even though we're not writing any scripts. This is all done drag and drop from the GUI. Okay? So you can define your own action sets, and Apple also provides some predefined, undeletable action sets. The ones that Apple is currently providing, and this was not the case of every HomeKit release, get up, leave, return, and go to bed. And you can specify what happens in those action sets, and you have some more control later, what you can do with that. So again, my goal here over the last 10, hopefully next 5 minutes, is to get you guys thinking about how powerful this API is and what we could possibly do with it when we move outside of the house. Okay, so again, a lot of this stuff is kind of hiding behind the GUI right now that Apple's providing. But again, there's a full API for your coding buddies to be able to help you out with creating your own custom apps that do pretty much whatever you want using these capabilities. Okay. But wait, there's more. Triggers. So we have scenes, aka action sets, combined with triggers, which are usually non-human created events. So you can have a repeating event that's based on date or time, or something happens in a particular way, okay? And here's some examples of what can happen. So the state of an accessory could change, and that could trigger something that you control what happens, okay? Geofence, meaning you walk into a room, or you walk into an area. So you can set up geofencing, and then when someone walks into that room, or that geofence, something happens, okay? Presence related to that. And then time. You can set things to happen on recurring schedules or once or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, the computer, the programmer me sneaks out. This is all what's called predicate-based. That just basically means if you've ever done any kind of if, then, else kind of stuff, if these things happen, then do this, else do something else. That's predicates. And you specify what those are, okay? And again, in the current Apple GUI, there are some options provided to you, but there's infinite options if you're writing your own apps or having someone write your own apps for you. Or as more and more people write apps to do this stuff. Okay, so again, calendar events is one that we talked about. Year, month, day, et cetera, et cetera. That's pretty straightforward. And again, I'm going fast through these slides. I would if I had more time, but you'll get them later, and you can look at them more and ask me questions. Significant events is something else that Apple provides. Sunrise and sunset are the most common significant events. And you can either have that wired up to the current weather, or it actually say what the current sunrise, sunset is, or you can decide what that is manually, okay? And then presence alerts, whether someone's there. The 4 current categories that Apple has for presence events is that a user arrives into the home, a user leaves the home or room or any other part of it, the last user leaves the home, or the first user arrives in the home. Okay, so we're going to talk about this in a business perspective. Imagine meetings at your organization, and you can have something trigger when everybody gets there. Or when someone leaves, you can know that. Or if you have a certain room that certain people aren't allowed in, and someone's in there, the Apple TV can trigger that for you. Let you know, hey, this person's not allowed in this room, but they're in there anyway. What do you want to do? Okay. I'll just let you read the slides on this. So threshold, yeah, I'll let you read the slides on this. If we have time, we'll come back to this. I want to do some other stuff, though, too, like talk about things. Okay? Same slide for no reason twice. Cameras, okay? I haven't shown you a list of all the accessory classes that Apple currently supports. One of the most important ones is camera. And camera also includes microphone, either a video camera or a still camera or a combination of the two, okay? You have absolute control of the settings on a HomeKit compliant camera and what comes out of that camera. That's pretty amazing, okay? So you can capture still images, capture media streams. Of course, the home aspect of this and the current products that are available, this is one of the weak points in HomeKit right now. There are only 3 HomeKit certified cameras right now, and most of them have the word baby in them, which makes sense, right? For a certain market, but not for all the market, okay? Okay, so again, whatever cameras can do, who's a professional photographer or professional enough that you've actually run your digital camera from your iPad? You set the aperture, you set, things like that? Nobody? Okay. Anyway, that's, we're not living in an analog film camera world anymore. You can do all kinds of crazy things that are awesome, and HomeKit can do that too. Okay? Control the audio of your camera. Okay? Muted or not, listening or not, okay? HomeKit can control all of this. Now, we're going to revisit service association. This is a perfect example of what a service association is when you have 3 service types that are actually combined into one device. So if you've got a modern doorbell camera with a lock, that's 3 different things according to HomeKit. It's a doorbell, it's a camera, and it's a door lock, okay? It will group those together with a service association, and then you can target both reading the values and setting the values programmatically. So again, I'm going to say this over and over again. I've said it a couple times already. It's not like other vendors aren't doing things like this. It's just the Apple way, the object-oriented way, is substantially different than any other thing that I've seen from other vendors, okay? This whole idea of categorizing, grouping, associating is pretty cool. Okay, and then you can get notifications back to your iDevice, okay? Whether it's a phone or a watch, telling you, hey, something's happening at your doorbell, okay? Pretty much every vendor does this. This is just how Apple does it, with these service associations and objects, and everything's secure, everything's encrypted, everything goes to a central home hub, home manager, okay? So things that have changed more recently, as of iOS 11 and beyond, you used to have to power on your accessory, make sure it was on the network, make sure it could be browsed properly, and then have HomeKit pair it, basically. Now, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you can either scan with a QR code before you plug the device in. HomeKit will already know that it's to be expected, that as soon as you plug that device, it goes, oh, I know all about you, because I know your QR code. I know where you are, what you do, et cetera, et cetera. That's awesome, okay? And then, of course, you can also use so either your scan or NFC. Automations on Home App. This was mentioned yesterday briefly as a sidelight of the quiz. I don't know if you guys caught that, but one of the quiz questions was, what's the new name for workflow? And the answer was shortcuts. And someone said, oh yeah, like in HomeKit. Like, exactly. So that's one of the ways you can automate in HomeKit is through shortcuts, which used to be known as workflow, okay? And then, sorry this looks so bad, the screenshot, but you can also use the automations that are available through the home.app. Who's used this in HomeKit before? Set up your own automations, okay? It's doing all that service associations and accessories and all that stuff under the hood, okay? But do you get every single choice you could ever possibly think of from the GUI? You get most of it, what you'd want, but not everything, okay? Again, ease of use. Okay, so you click on automations and you get a list of automations. People arrive, people leave, a time of day occurs, an accessory is controlled by something, a sensor detects something. Those are the current automation categories. And you click on one of those categories, set things up that you want to be monitoring, et cetera, and you go from there. Okay. What happens for the 99.9, it seems like, % of IoT things that you want to talk to that are not HomeKit certified? There is a solution, and it's called HomeBridge. Okay, right, JD, HomeBridge, your favorite thing ever? Yes. So HomeBridge is not from Apple. It's a server that is a Node.js server that runs on anything, including a Mac, including a Raspberry Pi, anything that runs Node.js. If you haven't heard the phrase Node.js before, it's basically a Java server, okay, simplified web Java server, okay? And it lets you do cool things, okay? Now, I put that in quotes because I basically got that entire line and the next slide from this URL, and I highly recommend that you go to this URL and take a look at this, because this is how you connect things that aren't HomeKit certified into your HomeKit network securely, okay? Again, this is the disclaimer that I also thought that I was compelled to put up here. It explains very clearly why not everything is HomeKit certified, and why you may want to think twice for certain devices on whether you want to HomeBridge them into your HomeKit or not, okay? So HomeBridge is awesome, and I highly recommend playing around with it if you have a HomeKit, especially for the things that are not supported by HomeKit. So like I said, the wonderful automation session by CTC, I think it was yesterday or the day before, all kinds of things that are really awesome IoT devices that are not HomeKit certified. God, I wish I could use that with HomeKit, and this is how you can do that, okay? So a quick review of HomeKit before we start doing discussions and talk about business aspects. Again, the HAP authentication, HomeKit authentication protocol, that is critical to understanding why HomeKit's architected the way it is. Apple wants security. They want you to be secure. They want everything happening in your home hub to be secure, okay? So when you're developing for HomeKit, or if you're a manager and you're like, hey, there's some cool stuff I want to do, I got to find a HomeKit developer and get this going, Apple's making that easier and easier to do with simulators and HomeKit accessory development kits, okay? Now, this is the big one that and even non-programmers need to understand. This is actually trickling down recently for the first time. Last year, and more so this year, Apple has allowed software authentication of HomeKit devices. So the reason why that's important is because up until recently, meaning a little over a year ago, if a device was not shipped with HomeKit certification, it was highly unlikely it would ever be HomeKit certified retroactively. Maybe there'd be a new model that would be, but the one that you bought wouldn't. Now, with software authentication, the vendor can ship out a firmware update, Apple will sign and approve that, and then all of a sudden your device is part of HomeKit if they've taken the time to do that, if the vendor's taken the time to do that. That's actually a really big deal, because vendors were really, there was no way until recently to retroactively make devices be HomeKit compatible. Okay. More resources for developers, which I'm a developer, I don't know if anyone else in here is. Okay, but they're in the slides. And then resources for users, okay? I'm not sure, I've looked at several articles from here. The 9 to 5 Mac has been actively having a HomeKit weekly. I'm not sure if they're hitting every week. Who's seen those articles at all? Okay, they're pretty decent, so I recommend taking a look at those to see what's going on. And again, HomeKit's not a perfect world that we're all, you know, swimming around in luxury. It's a bit of an effort right now, but it's getting better and better and better, okay? And then I just put a link in here to a CES 2018 video from somebody I don't know about all the new HomeKit products that arrived at CES this year. This is an Apple slide that I have borrowed from a WWDC presentation from last year about the current 2017 list of HomeKit vendors, okay, including lock companies, alarm companies, et cetera. Okay, so the ones that we want to see, Ecobee and stuff like that, Sylvania for lighting, I think Philips is in here too. Yeah, so there's good stuff in there. Okay, So what is causing the slow adoption of HomeKit? I'm asking that not as a rhetorical question, but it is actually a question. I have some theories, and one of the theories is, having been in the industry for a while and been in object-oriented technology for a very long time, I should have mentioned earlier on that when I was in college, I had an Apple II, which was very outdated even at the time, and then I went right to a NeXT Cube. So I would skip from an Apple II to a NeXT Cube. I never actually owned a Mac until about 10 years ago. So that's pretty atypical, 15 years ago. But anyway, so why is the slow adoption here? I think it's because it's not as easy to use, it's not as easy to set up as other technologies. Okay? That's my opinion. And that's all it is an opinion. Okay? Other things that I've seen have this same thing are everything that we use right now is based on NextStep and OpenStep, which were considered massive failures in the 90s. But all of a sudden, people saw the light. Okay? Who's been in the industry long enough to remember when Mac OS 10 first started trickling out and the response from Mac OS 7 and Mac OS 8 users at the time? Okay? It was not pleasant. It's like, why would I need all this Unix stuff? What a waste. Okay? Just for fun, have someone under 20 go play with a Mac OS 6 or Mac OS 7 box right now and see what they think. Okay? So, yeah. And then, of course, networking. Okay. This is actually timed pretty well. I got about 5 or 10 minutes, which is what I wanted. Okay? So I don't have time, which I suspected. 2 years ago, I gave a presentation on creating, it was similar to this, but without HomeKit, creating an Apple TV presence outside of the home, but without the HomeKit stuff. We talked about how you can create code with the Apple TV. The most common way to create code for an Apple TV is Cocoa Touch, which is the Xcode and the more, up to the App Store and everything. Okay, these are in the slides, so I'm skipping through them. But there's also something called tvML Kit, which if you have a copy of the slides from 2 years ago, or you contact me later this week or in the near future, I will go through this with you, how you can create XML, JavaScript, web, HTML-based apps for your Apple TV without going to the App Store, without having to learn Cocoa Touch, Xcode, any of that stuff. Who here either has done some web programming or has someone in their organization that is web programming? Okay? You or they can learn this pretty quickly and start putting apps on your Apple TV. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so again, JavaScript-based, not a web browser necessarily, it's an app development kit, blah, 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 so I'm going to skip that. And then the enterprise dashboard was our discussion last time. That's the dashboard from a 65 Corvair, and that's from a more modern car, but an old-fashioned modern car. And of course now we have Teslas and stuff like that. Things get better and better. Anyway, I'm going to skip through this stuff and get to back to the, oops, that's not what I meant to do. I want to get to our discussion here. So back to Apple TV. And again, if you have questions about the stuff that I just blasted forward at 90 million miles an hour, please don't hesitate to ask me. Okay? So again, the whole idea of the habitat as opposed to the home, flexible habitat. So switching back to what the subject of this talk is, what can we do with an Apple TV in a non-home environment with or without HomeKit that makes it really awesome? Okay? So we can do the stuff that you do in a house. So we can do the home stuff. That applies in an organization. Lighting, alarms, door locks, faucets and sprinklers. Okay? If you have a small business, you may want to do a lot of the stuff that you're paying a service to do with your Apple TV, knowing that you can actually do this pretty easily with HomeKit and other technologies. Okay? Now I want to take a look at the HomeKit accessory classes. Actually, we'll do this if we have time in a minute. So that link right there is the same link that was in earlier. If you want to look at it right now yourself, I encourage that while I talk over it. So did anyone who wants that URL get it yet? I'm about to. Okay, so in your non-home organization, what's stuff that you can do with an Apple TV that is unique to, that you really wouldn't do in a house necessarily? I suppose you could, but you wouldn't do. Okay? JD talked yesterday about reader boards, okay, and why would you want to run your reader board with the brand new Mac Mini when a Raspberry Pi can do that? okay? Sitting in between the cost of a Raspberry Pi and a Mac Mini is an Apple TV. Maybe you want to run your reader boards with your Apple TV in addition to other stuff, or maybe you want to run a Raspberry Pi using HomeKit to run your reader board, or several reader boards, okay? Again, the architecture of HomeKit, in my opinion, is superior to what we've seen so far blasting out into the world. I think that it's this, you know, laying in wait, waiting for awesomeness to happen. Okay, awesomeness is already happening. I think it's going to get more awesome. Okay. Maybe you want to read badges using an NFC reader and Apple TV and HomeKit. Maybe you don't. That's just a suggestion. I'm positing things here that I want you guys to think about, and I'm going to be encouraging you guys to participate soon too. So the session on NFC a couple days ago, again, he had it was a little glass capsule literally in the web between his thumb and his finger. You don't have to go that extreme. You can wear a bracelet. You could have a badge. These could all be NFC based. Your Apple TV and HomeKit can read things, okay, and let you in and out of doors, okay? Let you in and out of offices, let you in and out of things. That's pretty cool, okay? As I mentioned earlier, you can have meetings based on the user's presence or not presence. You can have security based on whether someone's in a room that shouldn't be there or not. Okay, without an alarm actually going off, it's just Apple TV can send you an alert through its notification process to do whatever you want, okay? One of the things that the CTC people were complaining about yesterday is trying to get people to put an iPad in every room. I'm going to ask the same question he asked. Who thinks iPads are expensive? Okay, if you've got several rooms and you want to put iPads in every room, that adds up very quickly, okay? What if you had it so that you don't have to have an iPad on the wall that anyone can walk up to and use? What if the people that need to do whatever's in that room will have that capability on their phone, and they can do that when they walk into the room? Okay? Think of the cost that's gone. Your costs have gone way down if that's happening from your iPhone or an iPad that you carry with you, as opposed to having to have an iPad in every single room of every single place that you want to control things. Okay? That sounds good to me. And again, you don't have to have any login to an iPad. People that are supposed to be able to control the temperature and lighting in a room will have permissions, and those permissions will allow them to do or not do certain things based on presence and who they are. That's all part of HomeKit DNA, okay? That's really cool, okay? So things that are not necessarily HomeKit related, that are also Apple TV related, who's used conference room mode on an Apple TV? This is not HomeKit. We're switching gears a little bit. So conference room mode means basically there's nothing to click on. It just shows some screenshots or some looped videos, okay? And it just lets your run in the background. HomeKit runs in the background while your Apple TV is in conference mode, okay? HomeKit, the Home Hub, Home Manager does not turn off when the Apple TV is in conference mode. Think about that. That's cool. So you can have your Apple TV showing off, you know, the weather or whatever you want that you've controlled and programmed that no one can change while it's doing its HomeKit stuff in the background, okay? You can install Plex to stream your local company videos, okay? And again, Apple TV is at a great price point between Raspberry Pi and Mac Mini and beyond. Okay, now I'm really jumping ahead here with some weirdo stuff. What about putting an Apple TV in a car? I used to install Mac Minis into cars. I have one of the vehicles I have is a 1964 Dodge motorhome. Okay, who has an RV of any era, recent or vintage or whatever? Okay, who likes the way that the controls work in their RV? Right. Okay, controlling the shore power versus your on your generator, climate control. Even the most expensive multi-$100,000 RVs, in my opinion, are pretty lame at that. Okay, what if an Apple TV and your iPhone are all of a sudden involved in that? Wouldn't that be cool? So again, thinking outside the box, thinking of Apple TV doing things that aren't in your house, okay? You could have it start your car. You could have it honk and all. Let's say you're in your house and you think something, you hear some ruckus outside, and all you want to do is make some noise. You can just start your car going boop, boop, boop. Yes, you can do it with your key fob and press the alarm button if you're close to it, But what if you're in the basement or something and you want to do that with Apple, with HomeKit? No problem, okay? What about at a resort? Okay, years ago, Apple was deploying Mac Minis on cruise ships, okay? What about doing Apple TVs on cruise ships or resorts? Wouldn't that be cool? Okay, think of what you could do there. And now I'm asking you guys, what else can you think of now that you see this architecture and all of its power and all its security and all of its coolness that you might want to see outside of the home, okay, that you think is a good idea? Anybody? You'd have to assume that everybody's got an NFC device or an iPhone or something, but yeah, wouldn't that be cool? Take attendance? That would, you're not acting like Ben Stein going, Bueller, 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 anyone? Yeah, exactly. So anything else? Digital signage, yep, exactly. That sounds good. Anything else? Recording a meeting. Okay, and the cool thing about that is that's awesome, but what if there's someone in the meeting that you don't want to have participating in the recording? The recording can be automatically disabled because it's detecting their presence. You don't have to configure anything. You don't have to go, oh, we forgot. Okay, it's all part of it, yep. So anything else? Think about it and let me know, because what I plan on doing over the holidays is working part-time on the stuff that earns me money and working a lot in my secret laboratory on all this kind of stuff. I'm going to add Arduino to the mix, Raspberry Pi, also some AR and VR stuff that I've been playing around with. So contact me. Let me know if you come up with any good ideas. If you want me to look at something for you, I'd be happy to do that. Okay, and then here's what I talked about briefly at the beginning. I would like to talk to Neal about this. I'd like to know what your guys' interest is in having an evening open lab with all this stuff sometime at MacTech. So not the vendor room. Vendors are welcome, and I encourage them. I'd love to have CTC, and Elgato was here a couple years ago. That'd be great, and we could all sit there and play with this stuff. We'd bring the hardware, have something set up. I wanted to do something like that today. I couldn't figure out how to do it in this limited time and in this room. So anyway.
So gauging interest, I mean, seriously, show of hands. Who would participate in that lab?
I think that'd be really cool. Yeah.
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 That's a good response. Awesome.
Yep. That's what we want to see. Thank you. Okay, and this is a stub slide that I'm going to fill in later when you guys get the slides. And yes, Neal will get you the slides. And that's it. If you guys have any more questions or anything for me, we're okay time-wise, right? So Sean's the boss of time.
Sure, we're good.
Okay.
We got time for questions. I got one for you.
Okay.
So with HomePod, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's tied to the Apple idea of the device that set it up.
Apple IDs, yes.
Right. So so for everybody, so in a home,
right.
At home, right? For everybody else in the family, it's great for music,
right.
But you lose a lot of the cool factor of calendars and messages and all of that other stuff.
Right.
Any recommendations for dealing with that, hacking?
That's a difficult, hacking, I don't know. I'm not really familiar with the HomePod. I haven't played around with that very much. But in general, even on Apple TV, Apple IDs and the limitation of 5 in a family, things like that, all come and bite you when you're trying to get everybody into an organization. So I don't have a quick answer for that, but I'll take a look at that in my lab. So yeah, but no, that's always an issue. In fact, is this the first MacTech that doesn't have a session on Apple IDs? I think it is, actually. So yeah, how do you work around Apple IDs? So yeah, so anything else? Yes?
The extension of that. The extension of that is everybody has a home, but everybody also has a number of things that are not a home that also are part of their authentication pool of things. And so the logical thing is an Apple ID can be the administrator,
right?
But there needs to be the bigger pool of possible administrators and the bigger pool of how do you add people to groups. So the whole authentication thing being locked to a single Apple ID, which is the only thing that Bluetooth will talk to in a network, if that Apple ID is present, really limits. And I think that's part of the slow adoption.
Yes, I agree with you completely, because Apple IDs and the way Apple handles them for organizing groups is problematic. Okay, like I said, who has Apple IDs grouped in a family? Okay, five people, right? Okay. You can't extrapolate that for your organization, okay? So what's the other option? I don't know. Does anybody know? And then you got to get the permissions to get that.
Yeah.
But that's not currently a thing. It's for mere mortals, as far as I know. Yeah.
For the recording, I mentioned that schools have managed Apple IDs to where an administrator says, okay, you're on my list, you get this Apple ID, boom.
Right. But there's nothing outside of schools for that, as far as I know. Right. And also with schools, who's ever wanted to be able to log into with different users into an iPad? Okay. Do you know that schools can do that? So it's technologically possible, but what about the rest of us, right? So anyway, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. I'm just going to say right now, there's not much I can do about Apple IDs, so yeah. Right. I don't have a recommendation because I've tried several different ways to get what I want with the way things currently are, and I haven't found any that I like the best. So I just use my Apple ID because that's what Steve tells us to do, right? Even from the great beyond. Use our Apple ID, yes.
So I apologize. I did actually allow us to go a little bit over. So
Okay.
everybody, Scott,
So I'm
Neal.
done. Thank you.